Sego Sewa Guego, Skawennati Ujats. I'm a Ganyange Haga, which is Mohawk in the Mohawk language, from Gahnawage, which is a reservation, very close to Montreal. I'm actually right now, however, in Hawaii. So I'm not in my territory at the moment. I'm going to share my screen with you, and I will tell you about some of my artwork. So I titled my talk more like world building in response to the Marshall McLuhan phrased quote that was on your brief. Thinking about art as a distant early warning system. And I don't think about my practice that way. I think about my practice as it's more like world building. And I think the two things are very similar. I definitely believe that artists can imagine things that the scientists can then make, like, the iPhone, waiting for the jetpacks and waiting for the teleporters. But yeah, and but I also think that the distant early warning, the dew line is like it's aggressive, it's warlike, it's from the military industrial complex. And I didn't want to be part of that. Whereas world building, you think of Tolkien and creating an entire world. And that's what I think I'm trying to do. So that's what I was looking at. I already told you my name. That's my favorite font. And yeah, I think of myself as an Indigenous futurist, or I've been thinking about the future for a very long time. I always loved science fiction. As a child, I watched Star Trek, and then as a young and a little bit older, I read all kinds of science fiction books. But it took me a long time to realize that all the characters or none of the characters were ever Indigenous or brown. And I was like, where are we? And so slowly I started to realize that I guess I had to put them in there. And so I started to try to tell these stories. I was I was assuming that someone's going to read my bio, which I do not mind at all that you don't. But in my bio I say that I talk about my work from my perspective as an urban Ganyangehaga woman and as a cyberpunk avatar. And this is her, XOX, my avatar, who I love. But I won't be talking that much about her today, but that's another presentation. What I'm going to start off with is my first work in which I imagined Indigenous people in the future. And that work is called Imagining Indians in the 25th Century. It was made in the year 2001 or maybe 2000. I might have the date wrong my own self. But it was a web work, a web-based paper doll / time travel journal. And in it, I imagined a timeline starting in 1490, 2 years before Columbus arrived in the so-called New World, and ends in 2490. And on each point of the time, so basically there's one significant event per century in that millennium. And I imagine this person, Gadzitsa Hawi Kapozo, so she's a little bit like me, but not quite me, who in an inexplicable way can time travel, but she makes a journal entry for each of those moments. This website is still online and you can go and look at it later. We'll send you the link. But I'm just focusing right now on different moments from that timeline, and this one is like the last or second to last stop on the timeline where she's at the power of the future, and I can't remember the year actually, but it's like way in the future. And so yeah, I think each of I'm not going to describe it all fully because I don't have the time, but I of course invite you to look at it, and I have just a couple of slides, but what I really need to tell you about is what it's about. And so because I don't say directly, even though you can read all these 10 journal entries, but really it's the first time I imagined a new world, a world in which Indigenous people were again thriving, a world in which maybe there was a different law. So in Canada, again, I can't go too deeply into this, but we are Native people are governed by the Indian Act. This determines who is Indian and who is not. And a big part of that act that really, I say, killed a lot of us, not physically, but took away our native status, was saying that an Indian was a man or his wife or children. And effectively, how that law was rolled out was to say that any Native woman who married a white man lost her status, and so did her children. So I'm one of those children. My Mohawk mother married an Italian man, my father, and so for years I did not have status. This was finally overturned, which is part of what I was talking about very, very tacitly in this piece. It was imagining that that had never happened and that we were still the majority, or once again the majority, or still the majority in our lands. Like I said, so this is like the year 2000, the turn of the millennium. And a few years later, well, okay, sorry, let me tell you something else. I really, really thought this piece was going to have like four characters, all of whom would have different costumes, and because she wears a historically accurate costume too for each of her visits. And have these different points of view, but, deadlines. So I just made the one. And also, actually, I had some great feedback where someone said, keep it simple, stupid. And so I just had the one character. And, I saved the other character, or one of the other characters, or at least he kept running around in my mind. Okay. And so finally, I found the moment and the medium and the opportunity to bring him to create a new artwork. And now it's 2004, and I discover Second Life, which is, as some of you may know, a massively multiplayer online world, which still exists and still has tens of thousands of people anytime you jump in there. And but the reason, someone showed it to me and said, you can make machinima in here. And I was like, machina what? Like, what is that? But for those of you who don't know, it is making movies in a virtual environment like a video game where you have an in-world camera or screen capture software, and you can capture the action in the video game. And so I started to customize avatars. So I saw a wonderful potential here to customize avatars, create environments, and tell stories. And so I took a lot of the information and research I did for imagining Indians in the 25th century, and I built the story around that same timeline that I made for imagining Indians. And I called it Time Traveler TM. And the TM is very important because if you do a search for, like, even before, I wasn't even doing Google searches probably, I can't remember, 2004, but anyway, it wasn't about the search function, but the point is that it's not, Time Traveler alone is so earnest. But Time Traveler TM is like, yeah, they've commodified that too. And so that's kind of what I was doing there. And in fact, that's what's happening in this movie. So I made 10 episodes, and now, instead of continuing to talk about it, I'd like to just show you a 3-minute trailer. It's a very long trailer that I made to try to represent all 9 episodes, which actually amount to 75 minutes of storytelling. And we'll all watch the video together for 3 minutes. Please mute your screen like everyone else already has. I have to do that. And in 3 minutes, we'll come back and we'll continue with the presentation. Okay. So yeah, I just have a few images that I'm going to show you from the different movies. And I call these images machinimagraphs because if a movie made in a virtual environment is a machinima, then I think a still image captured in there might be called a machinimagraph. And I'm not going to talk about each one except that I wanted to show you, that this person right here is exactly like Gadzica Howie Kaposo. She's wearing the same outfit, which gives me delight. And yeah, so what I want to talk about with you is that I was imagining, so it took me 7 years to make all these episodes. I also had two children during that time, and so that slowed me down. But also the first couple of years, it took 2 years to make the first episode because I was trying to figure out how to do it. And that's something I'm very happy to answer questions about later is how to make a machinima. But the other thing is that all the all the action, all the times when we're thriving are so far in the future. And this is the case as well with some of the subsequent uh, um, machinimas that I made. And I was invited to show this work in Regina, which is in Canada. And the wonderful curator there, whose name is Jennifer Matotek, had this wonderful idea, which was that we recreate some of the sets from Time Traveler TM and have the videos shown in the sets. So 3 of the sets had screens in them already. And so here, this is you can see the screen up here. This is an artwork like a canvas, but this is a screen that's playing video when you're watching the movie. And so I wanted to show you some of this. It was called Realizing the Virtual. Here is the set for Hunter's storage locker apartment. And here's what was created in the gallery. Here's the set for Garakwahaui's bedroom on the reserve in Kahnawake. And here's what we created in the gallery. And finally, here's the room that I just showed you a second ago. This is what I call Hunter and Garakwahaui's dream apartment. And this is what was created in the gallery because a circular couch was very expensive. But recently I had a show at the National Gallery of Canada and they bought the circular couch and I don't have a picture here, which is ridiculous. And I'm sorry, but anyway, it was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. But I wanted to tell you about it because of the feeling I got when we made these things. Like when I made this giant dream catcher, which actually my cousin Kathleen Deerhouse actually made this for me. But when I held it in my hands, because that giant dream catcher, we found it on Second Life Marketplace. And I was like, wow, who made this and why? And it absolutely has to go into Garako Howie's bedroom set because it's so fabulously kitschy and wonderful. And so then Kathleen makes this for me. Like she reproduces it perfectly. And I held it in my hands. And I was like, this feels good. This feels like the future's just a little bit closer, you know? And this is the thought that I had when I made my next work that I want to tell you about. And this was a big jump in time from 2000 and that must have been 2014 when I did that show. I'm sorry, I'm terrible at dates. And then 10 years later, 2024, I created They Sustain Us. They Sustain Us was a commission from a wonderful organization called Gray Area in San Francisco. They call themselves a technology incubator, but they show art. And they were trying to they got a grant to make what's it called? Mixed reality used to be hybrid. Is it called hybrid piece now? Hybrid reality piece, I think. Anyway, back in the day, they called it mixed reality. And I felt this was my chance to make a work in which the future was sooner and the future actually confronted you. The future popped out of the screen and came to you. And so what I did was, okay, so that's just hold that idea for 1 second because I need to tell you what it's about. They Sustain Us is the English direct translation of Joan Hekwa. Joan Hekwa, a lot of people would tell you, means the three sisters. And the three sisters are our beloved personifications of corn, beans, and squash, 3 crops that have been grown together by my people for millennia. And also yeah, that's about it actually. So these 3 sisters, corn, beans, and squash, or Oneste, Ozahede, and Onu Uzura, They are often depicted and mostly always depicted not like this at all. But as three people who live only, who are only in the past. They wear either buckskin clothing or maybe ribbon dresses, which maybe some of you who have been looking at Indigenous people are seeing right now because they're really happening right now. But as I thought about them, and I was planning to do that too, and I actually, I did another piece which I'm not showing it called Words Before All Else, in which I introduce, we give thanks for the three sisters, and so I wanted to depict them. I'm thinking about it, I'm planning to put them into some kind of ribbon dress or something very traditional. And as I keep thinking about how amazing they are and how they've overcome so many obstacles, in their very long life, I thought, they're actually superheroes. Like, can it be possible that no one has depicted them as superheroes before? Do I get to be the first one? Like, this is amazing. And so I really, so in that movie, I depicted them as superheroes. In They Sustain Us, I wanted to tell the story of how they became superheroes. And so, and I was really, it was very important to me, to show them wearing costume, like, how can I say this? I wanted to create fashion outfits to depict each time. So I wasn't doing so in the past, as you may have noticed, I didn't talk a lot about it, but I did pretty good historical research and I made sure all my characters were wearing appropriate clothing for every time period. That's not what I tried to do here. I wanted to have something that represented the time period, but was not the time period, something that pointed to it. So I want them to be very contemporary and now, but they're just wearing stuff that indicates that they have had this past. So I didn't create, but I focused on 4 time periods. So this one is called pre-contact, and these are the outfits that I made for them for that. This is called colonization. And so again, these are not colonial historical outfits. These are ones that point to colonialism. And so the ribbon skirt to me has been points to that time, but is like being readapted and evolved. And that's what's happening right now. And I wanted to push it a little further, make some ribbon pants, make a mini ribbon skirt, make something that's I haven't been seeing yet too much. Although now that as soon as you start looking for it, you find it. The third era is called genetic modification. And then here's what they look like in their superhero outfits. And so the superhero outfits, I'll tell you a tiny bit more about. On their logos, on their chests or their crests, refer to the sprout of each of the seeds. And these two, this is Ozaheda, beans, her sprout comes out this beautiful little spiral. And this you would see in a lot of our beadwork as well. Same with this one, which you don't see super well in this pose, but it's a beautiful little die cut, right? And it comes out like that. And then squash's symbol is similar. This one I haven't seen in beadwork so much, FYI. I also created these patterns, which you saw a little bit better here too, also based on their seeds. So this is, these are beans, corn niblets, and then squash seeds arranged in a flower. And I also developed the personalities of the three women a little bit more to help me think about what they would say. Oh, yeah, what they might say and what they would wear. And yeah, so what I did is, and was so wonderful because it was a giant screens, 3-channel video. And the idea was that we play this video, and I'm going to show you a snippet in a minute. And at the end of it, 12 beautiful Indigenous models walk out on this catwalk that you can barely see in this dark picture, and they're wearing the outfits, so I had them made. Some of them I made myself, and some I had made because I'm not good at stretchy sewing. And they were there. They were there in front of everyone now. So I'm going to play you. Oh, yes. And I wrote a hip hop song. And I had three Ganyangeha speakers perform it. So I really wanted people who could say their names. And also I didn't think it should be me performing it because I'm already XOX and I thought it would be weird if XOX's voice came out of one of these three. So here we're going to do the next link, and it's the last 3 minutes. So you don't get to see all the long period. It's the whole thing is about 14 minutes long. So yeah, let's go ahead and watch that now. I'm going to do the same thing as before, mute myself and stop sharing. Yes, so here they are. It was really thrilling for me. I also hired a professional photographer to take everyone's image. I don't have everyone's right here in this presentation. I have research assistants working with me. I didn't tell you a lot about myself, but I work as the co-director of Aboriginal Territories and Cyberspace at Concordia University in Montreal. And I work with my husband, who is a professor there, Jason Edward Lewis. And, as a professor, you can have research assistants, and some of them come in. I'm a research associate. Some of the research assistants work on my projects, and they help me make the machinimas. And so I was like, and we have a lot of Indigenous people coming in too. And so these three Indigenous women, I was like, do you think I can't afford to bring you to San Francisco unless you are a model. Would you like to be a model? And they're like, yes. So it was very fun. I had these, it was really nice for us all that they got to come and see the whole and see it and be part of it. She's a real model. This is one of the voices. This is the voice of Ozaheda, but she's wearing the outfit of Oneste. And there's everybody. She Falls for Ages is another machinima I made in 2016. It is the sci-fi retelling of the Haudenosaunee creation story. Haudenosaunee, for those of you who don't know, and a lot of people in like Montreal and in the territory don't know this, but so Haudenosaunee is our word for Iroquois. And it is the word for the confederacy of 6 nations that includes the Mohawk, or how we now again call ourselves the Ganyangehaga. We share the same creation story. We share our Thanksgiving address. We share many cultural protocols and stories. And so this is a story that's often told, and it has many different versions. Once again, in this story, sorry, I should tell you that in all the versions, however, what's common to them all usually is first of all, it takes place in Sky World, which is, a place beyond the heavens, described as a place beyond the heavens. There's always a very special tree. The tree is sometimes said to bear many different kinds of fruit or blossoms that light the world. There's always a pregnant woman who falls through a hole she's fallen or is pushed through a hole made by the uplifting, the removal of the tree. And she lands on an earth covered with water. And there's more. It's epic, it's really long. But this is what you see in this picture, and this is what I want to tell you, is that always when I've heard the story, it's been in a pre-contact Iroquois, like where, again, like I said before, people are wearing buckskin dresses, or they're using clay pots, they're living in bark-covered longhouses. And I wanted to imagine Sky World as another planet, like really another planet, with a technological superiority. And also, they always say that in Sky World is this wonderful place where they barely know the meaning of death. And so that's how it translated for me, is that they're living in peace, they're living sustainably, and they're living without a lot of illness. And I also wanted to imagine that Sky Woman, like many of the Mohawk women I know, had agency. She was not going to be so clumsy that she would fall through the hole or be pushed by her husband, like I heard in so many other versions of the story. She was going to choose to jump. She was going to be a brave astronaut. She was going to find a place where her child could grow up. And so these are just some machinomographs from the movie. Oh yeah, that's why I put this in here. In this scene, I want to point out that her and her husband are lying on this bed, which has a logo that my team created of the celestial tree. And this is another realization of the virtual for me, which is that, oh yeah, so is that. So that's her ceremonial costume here. And so, it's easy in Second Life to have a gigantic collar that defies gravity and also to cut circles out of fabric. It's actually not that easy. It's still a little bit wonky. But yeah, so I wanted to make that costume in real life. And so I did. And then I put it on and I cosplayed Sky Woman, which was very fun. Odzitsagayu is her name in some of the stories. This is again, here's the installation of it at the National Gallery. But this is what I really want to show you is that logo translated or transmediated into into a sculpture, a public artwork that was shown for one summer in Montreal, and in which I was imagining, like, what would it mean if our street signs referred to indigenous concepts and cosmologies? And so this is what I did. And again, it was this physical thing that I could touch, and that was bringing the future closer to me. So was the cosplay. This is a piece this is a little thing that you see. Maybe that's why I have that other picture. But anyway, that's directly from the machinima as well. And then very recently in 2025, I made this quilt. Like, I actually wanted to make that bed cover. And so I did that. But actually, you can't tell in this picture, but it's not as, it was too small to fit on a bed. I wanted to make a whole cloth white quilt, because that's like a cool thing in the quilt world. And also circles are difficult, so I wanted to do that. But the piece of fabric was only 53 inches or 54 inches wide. So I couldn't make it fit like an imaginary queen size circular bed. So I made a quiltstellation instead. And I made 7 because it refers to the 7 dancers, which is another name for the Pleiades, which is an important constellation in our planting season and our ceremonies. And also some people say that that's where Sky Woman came from. All right, how are we doing? So Three Sisters Reclaiming Abundance was another piece in which I wanted it to be very physical. And I really wanted to find an adult-sized Barbie doll to kind of make it look like, again, this kind of stepping stone from Second Life, because the avatars are kind of Barbie doll-like, for better or for worse. But I could not find that, so I had to use sex dolls, but I think they work well. I think they still look like avatars. And I created soft sculpture squash, corn and beans, and a machinima in the background that is 7 minutes long, that is called A Day in the Life of the Three Sisters, which goes from dawn till dusk. And finally, I don't have the video for this, but I actually feel like this Dollhouse Longhouse is a piece that's a machinima, and it's a machinima that I have projected onto this kind of dollhouse longhouse, and it's really cute. But it's based on a story called Lest We Remember, which I wrote. I was commissioned to write this story imagining the world in like 75 years from now, 2100. And I imagined a world in which people live together again in longhouses, but they're not the bark covered kind, and it's not like, earth, like sitting on top of the earth with fire, like, actual campfires inside, and which is great and fine. And if people want to do that, no problem. But I wanted to have like bathtubs and microwaves and computers, in the space. So I wanted to have all the mod cons, but I wanted people to be living in an intergenerational situation. And everyone in the household except me, the XOX is there. XOX, I'm imagining it was like me when I'm 150 years old. Everyone else, their first language is Ganyangeha. And so that was a nice exercise for me. And in the piece here, what's happening is XOX is singing a lullaby that I believe is to the tune of, I'm sorry, I'm already forgetting, but like Frère Jacques, or one of the very, very well-known lullabies, but it's in Ganyangeha, which is some of the revitalization work that is going on right now. People are translating these songs. People are working so hard to bring the language back, and it's happening. It's so exciting. And so I wanted to make a piece about that. And the most recent piece I created is called XOX Visits the King. And in it, I imagine a very near future in which XOX has a talk with King Charles III and gives him a piece of her mind and explains to him how the treaties must be respected. And that's the presentation. And so, yeah, so I am ending my presentation here. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.